it's Stephanie, and this is lesson 17 of the B2 course. So this is a vocabulary lesson, and our topic today is going to be crime and punishment. So this is level B2 and it's lesson 17. So crime is a really big topic with lots of vocabulary. So please make sure that you have some way of recording the new words that we're going to meet. Maybe a notepad, maybe a tablet, but you need to have some form of storing the new words. So crime is unfortunately a very common and topical issue. So maybe you watch the news in English, maybe you read online newspapers, or maybe you're sitting in exams such as IELTS, where crime is a very popular topic to be discussed. But in any case, there's a lot of very specific vocabulary that we're going to look at today. So in lesson 17, you will build your vocabulary to describe crimes, consider different forms of punishment, and talk about the justice system. So lots to do today. Now, in the advert for the lesson, I gave you 5 different crimes, and I said what crimes are being described. So 5 descriptions, and I was asking what are these crimes. So let's see if you knew. Number 1, stealing from a shop. Number 2, making fake money. Number 3, threatening to reveal secrets. Number 4, driving after drinking alcohol. And number 5, killing someone. Can you tell me what 5 crimes are being described here? Pause the slide and note down your answers. Okay, let's check together. So, number 1, stealing from a shop is shoplifting. Number 2, making fake money is counterfeiting. Number 3, threatening to reveal secrets is blackmail. Number 4, driving after drinking alcohol is drink driving. And the easiest, I think, is number 5, which is killing someone, and that's murder. So that's probably the most recognised word there. But well done if you managed to get all 5. Okay, so to start the lesson today, we are going to think about some issues connected to crime. I'm going to ask you 3 questions that I want you to think about. How would you answer these that are true for you? Number 1, have you ever been a victim of crime? I hope you haven't, but think about your answer. If you have, how would you describe what happened to you? Number 2, is crime a problem in your city? So think about where you live. What types of crime are common where you are? And number 3, do you think there will be more or less crime in the future? And this is perhaps a very interesting question to think about. Think about crimes that were very common 50 years ago. Are things different now? Are there different types of criminals committing different types of crimes? And what do you think will happen in the future? So important to pause the slide here. Think about how you would answer these questions. Okay, so let's move on to some vocabulary. I'm going to tell you 5 different crimes, and I want you to see if you can write a description, an explanation. So, what are these crimes? Number 1, mugging. Number 2, theft. Number 3, burglary. Number 4, pickpocketing. And number 5, arson. So pause the slide and see if you can write a description. What are these crimes? Maybe some of them might seem similar, but they are very different, so be careful. Okay, let's see. So what we're going to do now is, this time I've given you the 5 crimes and 5 descriptions. You need to see if you can match the crime with the correct description. So look at my descriptions and look at what you've noted down and see if you can match. Okay, so number 1, we have mugging, theft, burglary, pickpocketing and arson. And the 5 descriptions: A, dishonestly taking something that belongs to someone else and keeping it. B, intentionally starting a fire. C, stealing things out of people's pockets or bags. D, an act of attacking someone and stealing their money. And E, illegally entering a building and stealing things. So pause the slide and see if you can match 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with A, B, C, D, E. Okay, what do you think? Do you think you've correctly done that? Okay, well, let's check the answers together. Okay, so mugging matches with D. This is an act of attacking someone and stealing their money. Now, the key word here is attacking, because mugging, there's always an element of violence. So maybe somebody threatens you or attacks you, but it's a physical act of your money or your purse, your bag being stolen. Number 2, theft. This is just a more general term. Dishonestly taking something that belongs to someone else and keeping it. Number 3, burglary matches with E. Illegally entering a building and stealing things. Keyword here is building. A burglar, the crime of burglary, will come into a building like your home, your office, and steal things. Number 4, pickpocketing. There's a clue in the word. Stealing things out of people's pockets or bags. So again, unfortunately, this is very common in crowded places such as train stations. Maybe you see the sign, beware of pickpockets. You've got to be careful where you put your wallet because people can easily take it out of your pocket. And number 5, arson matches with B, intentionally starting a fire. Well done if you correctly got all 5. There were some very different words there, so well done if you managed to match them. This time we're going to start with a description. So this time I'm going to give you 5 descriptions and I want you to tell me what's the crime. Okay. A, giving someone money or something else of value, often illegally, to persuade that person to do something you want. B, illegally using a computer to access information stored on another computer system. C, getting money by deceiving people. D, intentionally killing a person. E, illegally copying a computer program or music or film and selling it. So pause the slide and see if you can tell me what are these crimes. Okay. So now I'm going to tell you 5 crimes and see if you can match. See if they're the same crimes that you noted down and see if you can correctly answer the description. Okay, so the 5 crimes are: 1, murder; 2, piracy; 3, hacking; 4, fraud; and 5, bribery. So see if you can match 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with A, B, C, D, E. Okay, ready to check your answers? Let's have a look. So murder, we've already talked about this, so you should have correctly matched murder with D, intentionally killing a person. Number 2, piracy, something that's very common. Illegally copying a computer program, music, or film and selling it. Hacking is illegally using a computer to access information stored on another computer system. Number 4, fraud is getting money by deceiving people. And number 5, bribery is giving someone money or something else of value, often illegally, to persuade that person to do something you want. So that's quite a long description, but bribery literally is maybe you give somebody money in order for them to do what you want them to do. Or maybe somebody has a fine or a parking ticket, and if they try to give money to cancel the parking ticket, that is bribery. So some of the crimes mentioned there would be very useful to talk about perhaps in the discussion topics that we looked at the beginning of the lesson. We thought about changing crimes and what crimes will be more common in the future. Or perhaps computer-based crimes such as piracy and hacking are becoming more and more common. And in the past, these crimes didn't exist. Okay, so we're going to move on now. We've talked about crime. Let's think about the criminals. So let's think about the people who commit these crimes. Okay, so you can see on the left we have the 10 different crimes that we've talked about. And if you look on the right, I've listed the criminals, the people who commit these types of crime. And here you can see how they form a word family. That means they have the same root of the word. For example, mugging is the crime. The criminal is a mugger. Theft is the crime. A criminal is a thief. Burglary, a burglar. Pickpocketing, a pickpocket. Arson, an arsonist. Murder, a murderer. Piracy, a pirate. Hacking, a hacker. Fraud, a fraudster. Bribery, we don't actually have a word. You'd have to say somebody who bribes. We don't actually have a noun for the person who commits this crime. You have to say somebody who bribes somebody else. But what is important to note is that if you know one form of the word, it obviously helps you with your vocabulary for the other words. So if you know what mugging is, and then you see the word mugger, then you will obviously be able to understand the context. You'll be able to understand what is being talked about. Okay, let's move on to some more people connected to the topic of crime. Okay, so who are these people? A judge, a jury, a lawyer, a prisoner, a witness, and a suspect. All important in the process. They all have a role in the process of crime and punishment. But what role do they play? Who are these people? So pause the slide and see if you can write down who these people are. How would you describe? Who is a lawyer? Who is a witness? Okay, let's check our answers. So, a judge is a person in charge of a trial and who decides the sentence. Now, the sentence here means the amount of time somebody is going to be in prison. It's a prison sentence. The judge might sentence someone to 5 years in prison. A jury. This is a group of people who listen to a trial to decide if someone is guilty or not guilty. Now, juries don't happen in every country, so depending on where you live, you might have a different system. But in many countries, juries do exist, and it's an important word to know. A lawyer, a person who gives legal advice and who speaks for you in court. A prisoner is someone who has been found guilty of a crime. A witness is a person who sees an event happening. And a suspect is a person believed to have committed a crime. So remember the saying, you are innocent until proven guilty. So in a trial in the United Kingdom, the person would be referred to as the suspect until they have been found guilty of the crime. Okay, so we're going to practice this vocabulary now. So I'm going to show you some sentences. There are gaps. You need to complete them with the correct person. So this is all vocabulary we have just looked at. Okay. Number 1. Listened to the evidence but decided that the was not guilty. Number 2, questioned about exactly what they had seen. Number 3, the sentence to life behind bars. Described what had happened that day. Must decide if someone is guilty or innocent. Number 6, is innocent until proven guilty. Number 7, will spend her days in a cell. Number 8, has to present the evidence in a convincing way. And number 9, is responsible for deciding an appropriate punishment. Pause the slide and see if you can complete the sentences with the correct person. Okay, how did you do? Shall we check our answers together? Let's have a look. Number 1, the jury listened to the evidence but decided that the suspect was not guilty. 2, the lawyer questioned the witness about exactly what she had seen. 3, the judge sentenced the prisoner to life behind bars. 4, the witness described what had happened that day. 5, the jury must decide if someone is guilty or innocent. 6, the suspect is innocent until proven guilty. 7, the prisoner will spend his or her days in a cell. 8, the lawyer has to present the evidence in a convincing way. 9, the judge is responsible for deciding an appropriate punishment. How did you do? Well done if you managed to get all of those correct. Okay, so we've talked a lot about different crimes, we've talked about the criminals, we've talked about people involved in the justice system. What we're going to do now is to think about the sequence of events. So what happens in what order? So I'm going to show you a slide with 10 different situations, 10 events, all connected to the same story, but they are in the wrong order. So you need to reorder the events so that it logically makes sense. So think about the process, think about logically what would be the correct order. Okay, so can you put these events into a logical order? Number 1, I called the police. Number 2, the jury found him guilty. Number 3, the defence made their case. Number 4, the police questioned a witness. Number 5, I was burgled. Number 6, the suspect appeared in court. Number 7, the prosecution made their case. Number 8, they arrested a suspect. Number 9, the judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison. And number 10, the police investigated the crime scene. So there's lots to think about here. Think about what happened first, or maybe think about what happened last and then work backwards. But see if you can put these slides into a logical order. Okay, let's have a look. So number 1, I was burgled. So this is the crime. This happened first. Then I called the police. Number 3, the police investigated the crime scene. Number 4, the police questioned a witness. So maybe 3 or 4 could be inverted depending on your interpretation. Number 5, they arrested a suspect. Number 6, the suspect appeared in court. 7, the prosecution made their case. Number 8, the defence made their case. Number 9, the jury found him guilty. And number 10, the judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison. So hopefully what you'll notice here as well is that I've highlighted the verbs that you need to use in these situations. So, for example, to investigate a crime scene, to question a witness, to appear in court, to be found guilty of a crime. The prosecution and the defence, they make their case. That means they present their evidence. So these are very common collocations. So it's important to note the verbs that are being used to talk about them. Okay, so the final part of the lesson, we're going to talk about punishment. We've talked about the crimes, the criminals, the people involved in the process. But what happens when somebody is found guilty? So at the end of our story there, the suspect was found guilty of the crime. But what happens next? So thinking about different types of punishment. Do these exist in your country? Community service, a suspended sentence, prison, and a fine. So do these types of punishment exist where you live? Do you know what these types of punishment are? Okay, let's check together. So community service, this would be when somebody is found guilty of a crime and the judge orders that they have to do some form of work that would benefit the community. So this could be something like cleaning or gardening, but some form of work that will be beneficial to the community as a whole. Number 2, a suspended sentence. So this is when the judge considers that perhaps the action was very out of character and he wants to give the person the benefit of the doubt. So the person has been found guilty, but the judge believes this isn't normal behaviour. They might give them a suspended sentence. This means that the person is free to go, but if they commit another crime within a certain period of time, they will have the first crime added to the second one. So if they don't do anything ever again, then that's fine. They don't have to go to prison. They don't have to pay a fine. But if they commit another crime, then they do. Prison, I think, is very clear. And number 4, a fine. This is when you have a financial payment to make. So this perhaps is a very common thing to happen for more minor crimes. Okay, so think about what types of crimes do you think deserve these punishments? This is a very interesting topic to think about. And again, it will vary a lot depending on which part of the world you live in. But what crimes do you think deserve these punishments? So when do you think it's beneficial for the person who's found guilty to be made to do some form of community service? When do you think a fine is appropriate? When should somebody definitely go to prison? And in what situation do you think a suspended sentence would be a good idea? Okay, lots to think about there. And the final part of the lesson is another discussion. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions and see if you can note down your answers. What do you think? What's your opinion on these questions? Number 1, is prison an effective punishment? In the news, there's a lot of discussion about prisons being overcrowded. Does the prison system have the capacity to take in more criminals? And do you think it's an effective way of punishing people? Which leads on to number 2. If not, how can we deter crime? And number 3, a bit more controversial. And again, it will depend in which country you live. But what do you think of the death penalty? So in some countries this still exists, in others it doesn't. But what do you think? What are your views on this? So lots to think about in our lesson today, and we will review this again in lesson 20. Remember, there is a test you can take after this lesson to see what you can remember. And our next lesson together, lesson 18, will be another grammar lesson, and we will be looking at the passive too. But thank you very much for watching today, and I hope you found it a useful lesson. See you next time.